Hey everybody, Merry Christmas. But as you probably know by now, it hasn't been a very Merry Christmas for Nashville, and in particular downtown Nashville. It happens to be where that explosion occurred at 166 7th Avenue. And you could say, how do I know that? Well, all you have to do is go to Google, type Nashville explosion downtown address, and the number of accounts that tell you exactly where that occurred. That's how. But I digress. I was down in that exact same area in 2019 for the NFL draft, made a live stream video walking through what I call the backstage of it. I made a number of videos going from the NFL media pavilion to the red carpet and back. That happened in the exact area that was damaged, impacted by the RV bomb that was exploded at 166 2nd Avenue. Now, I want you to think about what happened in the context of what I'm about to say. Nashville has experienced first business interruption because of high winds during this year in March, and as part of what was identified as a tornado with 71-mile-per-hour and up winds. That caused a number of businesses to close, and in the same area that the explosion that happened this morning occurred, among other areas in Nashville. Then, of course, there was the constant impact of the pandemic itself. So if you take the pandemic, the tornado, and the power shutdown because of the Jericho, that shut down many businesses in the Nashville area. All that happened this year, that spells major loss of income, and in particular the pandemic, because the area that I was in was used by the NFL and by NFL affiliated companies for NFL draft related businesses in 2019. What were the businesses that were used? Well, restaurants with multi-story areas that had large places where, for example, the NFL draft media luncheon could be held. In fact, the NFL draft media luncheon was at a venue just across the street from where that RV was located. That's right. And on the other side of that same building were the NFL draft associated areas like the NFL Draft Media Pavilion, a giant tent that featured tables where members of the media could go to write their posts related to the draft and upload their videos. And then, of course, the NFL Draft main stage was just a walk away, and the red carpet was on the other side of the street that fronted the NFL Draft main stage, and all of that was just across the river from Nissan Stadium. So that's Nashville's key economic center that was hit. You would say, why would someone do that? My opinion is that this was some type of way to get business insurance. Consider that, for those of you who don't think that business insurance will cover this sort of thing, not true. In the events that caused the September 11th, 2001 plane terrorism incident, the resultant damage caused insurance payouts of over $32.9 billion spread over various insurance categories. So don't think for a moment that insurance won't cover what happened down there. I think someone did this as an economic cry for help. So you're not going to hear, I don't believe, someone saying, oh, by the way, this was what was done and why we did it. They did it to trigger insurance payments, I assert, to help them recover from the worst economic year, I should say, that Nashville has had. But this sounds, I think, a warning to the rest of the nation and the government itself in terms of how, and governments, in terms of how they're responding or not to the pandemic with respect to paying businesses for the impact of forced closures due to the pandemic. We've had a habit, for the most part, of closure without compensation, and our economy has been kicked in its own knees by its own country, essentially, but for essentially a good purpose of saving our lives. But we forgot, as a country, half to fill out the rest of the equation, which is to pay businesses, which is us, to to make sure those businesses are solvent. The other problem is that all this is exacerbated by political extremism. Our allowance of extreme ideas expressed by this constant chant of left versus right or radical, social, and all this other jazz has interrupted our ability to understand collectively, intellectually, the role of government in our lives and how government can fix our problems. So a payout by some is considered, well, let the market take its case. But the market, historically, we've always taught, was aided by government so that market disruptions or market failures were compensated by government. Now we have a society that seems to say, let the market fail and not have government fix it or compensate for it. That's completely wrong and completely out of whack with the United States of America we designed. In the past, for example, during World War II, we put as a government the equivalent of $4 trillion into the economy, and then we said we would quite literally fix interest rates so that we could pay for the economic debt downstream or down years. Now we have people like Larry Summers saying, oh, that's just going to overheat the economy. Well, no, the economy is ours to fix, Mr. Summers. And my suggestion is, rather than using your lofty platform to make what I don't mean to be insulting, but our stupid comments about our economy, why don't you suggest a way to fix the problem rather than telling us why we can't fix the problem or shouldn't take, for example, in this instance that he was talking about, $2,000 stimulus payments. I wrote earlier this year, in May, that we have a $9.8 trillion problem. Meanwhile, the Trump administration says we paid out at that time $2 trillion. That's more than anyone has spent before. It doesn't matter. It doesn't meet the magnitude of the problem. We have to stop the extremism, come to a middle where we only focus on the real political factor, the real political entity there is, and that is the United States economy, of which we are a part of. The economy has its own set of political rules, and when we don't follow them, what happens, was what happened in Nashville, all right? Our economy is us needing money in various aspects of it to live and just simply get along. But there's a part of our economy that seems to say we don't want you to have money. And I don't know where that came from, but you can see how people are acting out in various different ways their objection to that idea. It doesn't matter if it's a rise in crime or, in good ways, people donating money to help other people, or in bad ways like what we're talking about today. But it all spells one thing, that our government is not working to fix these the problems that are caused by COVID-19, tornadoes and derricos, and other occurrences, and instead it's just sort of sitting back and being lazy about it and coming up with what it thinks are cute philosophies, which are essentially just pablum for those who don't want to think about how to help other people become solvent again. We got to stop it. I certainly hope I'm wrong about the motive, but my bet is that as the information comes in and the people who did this are identified, my bet is I'm going to be absolutely right. Subscribe to Zenny62 and bookmark oaklandnewsnow.com.